I am the true princess, exiled among common folk. Later, when Father Emperor fell gravely ill, requiring the heart's blood of a direct descendant, the false princess sent men to retrieve me. All praised the false princess for her magnanimity, willingly yielding the throne for Father Emperor's sake. The emperor favored her, the nobles adored her, and all gathered around her. Only I, after my heart's blood was extracted, was secretly poisoned with crane's head red by the fake princess's men. I died in an empty palace. My body was discovered only on the third day after my death. Deep resentment filled my soul, which drifted and lingered, refusing to dissipate, until I opened my eyes again, finding myself back on the very day the fake princess came to bring me into the palace. When Huiro came for me, I was washing clothes in the laundry workshop. Countless palace attendants had completely surrounded the entire workshop, everyone inside staring in shock at the noble lady standing at the very front. Bathed in sunlight, Princess Huiro wore an exquisitely embroidered gauze robe, its hem adorned with opulent peony blossoms, radiating resplendent beauty. Yet her face was even more alluring and vivid, bearing an innate nobility carved from a life of luxury and privilege, effortlessly outshining the splendid peonies. Huiro smiled warmly at me, approaching slowly as she said, "Sister, you've suffered." I wore clothes bleached white from washing, my expression blank as I looked at her. That very day, Huiro escorted me out of the laundry workshop, dressing me in beautiful gowns and adorning me with exquisite, costly jewelry. In my past life, it was precisely these small favors that made me regard her as the kindest soul in the world. So when I returned to the palace and Father Emperor asked if I wished to reclaim my position as the eldest princess, I refused. I only asked him to grant me the title of a county princess, because I didn't want to hurt Huiro. Noticing my slight distraction, Huiro waved her hand in front of my eyes and asked with a bright smile, "Sister, don't you like these jewels?" I looked at her and slowly revealed a sinister smile. "I like them." "Thank you." Huiro stared at my expression, momentarily stunned. Father was gravely ill, a matter of utmost urgency. So after finding me, Huiro rushed straight toward the capital without pause. Along the way, she told me my true origins. Weeping as she said, "I exhausted every effort to finally find you in this world. Sister, all these years, you suffered so much." Her tears fell like pear blossoms, but I listened expressionless. I knew better than anyone that she was lying. This fake princess, Huiro, was originally the child of a lowly wet nurse. That wet nurse had been personally arranged for my mother by Consort Zhang. When my mother was about to give birth, Consort Zhang kindly found her the most milk-abundant wet nurse in all the capital. Yet she secretly colluded with this nurse, plotting to swap me out after my mother delivered me. Then they would bring the wet nurse's child into the palace, after I was cast out beyond the palace walls. All these years, Consort Zhang and Huiro have always known what I endured, what happened to me. They constantly sent people to monitor my whereabouts. Occasionally, when they felt amused, they would add a little more suffering to my life for their amusement. I lived outside the palace for 14 years. My fate fraught with misfortune, tasting every hardship. My adoptive parents died young. I struggled to survive by begging for scraps, eating rotten steamed buns and drinking the filthiest water just to stay alive. I took any menial, backbreaking labor offered, as long as it earned me a morsel of food. At 14, my body was malnourished, pale and emaciated, my hands covered in calluses. Later, when the emperor suddenly fell gravely ill and required the heart's blood of a blood relative as a cure, Consort Zhang and Huiro immediately thought of me and brought me back to the palace. Now, seeing I spoke little, Consort Huiro simply dismissed me as odd and closed her eyes to rest. By the following afternoon, the carriage finally rolled into the palace grounds. Palace attendants guided me down. Gazing at the deep red walls before me, Everything looked exactly as it had in my past life. Consort Huiro led me straight to the emperor's bedchamber. Father's illness had struck suddenly, leaving him utterly weakened, confined to his sickbed. Before entering the chamber, Huiro warned me in a tone laced with threat, "The emperor is the son of heaven. You must judge for yourself what words are appropriate and what are not." I nodded. Only then did Huiro lead me inside. Standing beside me at the bedside, she called softly, "Father Emperor. Father Emperor." After a long moment, my father opened his slightly cloudy eyes and looked at us. Though weakened, he still radiated the majesty of the Son of Heaven. He studied me for a while. "You are Huai Jin." I nodded timidly. Father beckoned me with a wave, "Come closer." I sat directly on his bedside, reaching out to take his hand. "Are you truly my father?" I spoke while looking at him with an innocent, bewildered gaze. Huiro's expression shifted slightly beside us, her tone carrying a hint of rebuke. "Sister, such disrespect is unbecoming." My face drained of color. I immediately knelt on the floor, pleading with Princess Huiro, "Princess, please don't be angry. I don't understand the rules. Please don't scold me. I beg you." I spoke while sobbing uncontrollably, my whole body trembling. Princess Huiro's face turned pale as she made a move to approach me. Terrified, I backed away repeatedly. "Don't hit me. I won't dare again. I won't dare again." The emperor's voice grew stern from his sickbed. "Huiro, withdraw for now." Huiro froze abruptly, her face turning even paler. She helped Father Emperor adjust his position before turning to leave. But before departing, her gaze lingered deeply upon me. Father Emperor watched me, motioning for me to come closer. So I sat directly on his bed again. Father Emperor reached out and took my hand, studying it. My hands were hideous, covered in scars and thick calluses, not at all like those of a 14-year-old child. Father Emperor's eyes grew slightly moist. "Child, what have you been through?" I smiled and said, "It's nothing, Father. I just wash 30 sets of clothes during the day, then go pick some herbs on the mountain at night to sell to the pharmacy. That way, I can have a good meal." Father stared at me blankly, his voice already tinged with hoarseness. "Oh? What kind of good meal?" My smile grew sweeter. "I can have a bowl of Yangchen noodles and a scallion bun too," I added. "Sometimes the kind shopkeeper even gives me pork cracklings, they're so fragrant." Father gripped my hand slightly tighter, his voice darkening. "You've suffered." I replied, "Princess Huiro said you're gravely ill and need my blood to save your life." "Take my blood," I said, my voice dull, eyes red. "Living is just too exhausting. As long as you can live well, I'll be content." Father's eyes reddened. He rubbed my head. "Silly child. Don't think such nonsense." As I stepped out of the bedchamber, Princess Huiro stood waiting below. Her gaze toward me brimmed with undisguised coldness and loathing. I pretended not to notice. Unlike my previous life, this time I was assigned to the Linghua Hall, not far from Princess Huiro's Changel Hall. Though Father's illness was severe, extracting the heart's blood could not be rushed. First, my own health had to be restored to ensure my blood was sound. Thus, for the time being, I lived a life of pampered luxury. Father summoned me daily to keep him company. Sometimes he inquired about my experiences outside the palace walls. Other times he asked what foods I enjoyed. More often, however, he simply gazed at me quietly, smiling, his expression filled with tenderness and warmth. In my previous life, heeding Huiro's advice, I told the emperor during our first meeting that I had been well outside the palace and asked him not to worry. Though he felt remorse toward me, that guilt quickly dissipated. I was not favored. After my heart's blood was extracted, my body remained weak and frail, confining me to my sickbed day after day. Father Emperor had me confined to the secluded Qingxin Hall, where palace attendants only appeared to deliver my 3 daily meals. Later, a maid fed me a bowl of bird's nest porridge laced with cinnabar, and I met a tragic end within those halls. Therefore, to defy fate and rewrite destiny, this heart's blood must never be extracted. In the blink of an eye, I had spent over half a month within the palace walls. During this time, I bathed daily in hot spring water and anointed myself with the finest perfumed ointments. A young maiden's body is easiest to nurture. And in barely half a month, my appearance had transformed beyond recognition compared to when I first entered the palace. The rough calluses on my hands gradually faded, revealing my naturally fair skin. Just now, I had spent most of the day accompanying the emperor in his bedchamber before leaving. I excused myself to use the lavatory, instructing the palace attendants to return to the chambers to prepare supper, and thus shook them off. Several among those attendants were Huairou's spies, and I remained ever vigilant against them. Once free of the attendants, I headed straight for the cleansing chamber near the North Xian Gate. Today was the 7th day of the 10th lunar month in the Xinmao year. This evening, a young boy would undergo castration, becoming just another ordinary little eunuch in the palace. No one could have foreseen that years later, this boy would rise to become the all-powerful 9,000 years, wielding control over the entire court. After my death in my previous life, my soul lingered in the palace, drifting through the halls and observing the palace intrigues, weighed down by too much resentment to disperse. In the 5th year after my death, the emperor passed away. Crown Prince Ning Jingxing ascended the throne and, against all objections, crowned Princess Huairou as empress. Ning Jingxing was no wise ruler. After becoming emperor, he indulged solely in the pleasures of the harem. To cater to the new emperor's tastes, Huairou established a veritable orgy of debauchery within the palace walls, aiding and abetting his depravity. Meanwhile, all real political power gradually fell into the hands of the 9,000 years. Xia Wuyu. In the end, Ning Jingxing's imperial throne became a mere formality. He even had to bow and pay respects upon seeing Xia Wuyu, a truly laughable spectacle. Snapping out of my recollections, I immediately spotted Xia Wuyu among the crowd awaiting castration. At 15, his eyes were clear and pure, showing none of the ruthless, bloodthirsty demeanor he would adopt years later. I dismissed the palace attendants and had the chief steward of the imperial household department bring him before me. The 15-year-old youth, clad in faded, tattered hemp robes, knelt on the ground, looking up at me with hands clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. I tilted my head, smiling warmly as I asked him, "What is your name?" The boy's voice trembled slightly. I'm surnamed Xia. Everyone calls me Xia Xiaogo. I crouched down before him, forbidding him to kneel. Taking his hand in mine, I spoke softly, "Would you like to come with me?" The boy continued to stare at me blankly. Leaning close to his ear, I whispered in a voice only we could hear, "You won't have to undergo castration. As long as you stay with me, rest assured, no one will ever find out." His pupils dilated sharply, his eyes filling with tears almost instantly. His voice cracked, "Really?" I ruffled his hair, my smile growing sweeter. "Of course." I said, "You're truly handsome. From now on, you'll be Xia Wuyu. No more little dog." That day, I brought the uncastrated Xia Wuyu back to my chambers, dressed him in eunuch robes, and had him serve by my side. In his previous life, Xia Wuyu's sole regret was being castrated. Now I had saved what mattered most to him. This debt of gratitude would be enough to bind him to protect me for the rest of his life. Before I knew it, nearly a month had passed. During this time, I was meticulously groomed. My appearance and demeanor were now worlds apart from when I first entered the palace. Father Emperor restored my title as princess and had my palace renovated to unimaginable luxury. Even my bedchamber was adorned with several enormous night pearls. I instructed Xie Wuyu to begin bribing connections with silver, buying the loyalty of numerous pitiful palace servants from the lowest ranks. These lowliest servants, usually unremarkable and subjected to their master's abuse, were precisely the ones who could tip the scales of success or failure. Xie Wuyu, truly deserving of his future title of 9,000 years, proved highly skilled at winning hearts. He mastered the task almost instantly, flawlessly executing every assignment I delegated. Spies reported daily that whenever father bestowed even the slightest gift upon my palace, Huairo would fly into a rage in her own chambers, smashing objects, lashing out at servants, and beating attendants to death. I instructed Xie Wuyu to lavishly bribe those maids who had suffered Huairo's punishments, turning them into my loyal agents. On ordinary days, I continued to spend my time in Father Emperor's chambers, keeping him company. Sometimes we played chess together, other times we discussed ancient texts. Father Emperor would always gaze at me in wonder. Huaizhen, you were raised by that wicked wet nurse in the common folks' world, enduring such hardship from childhood. Yet on the chessboard, you display such mastery, truly a prodigious talent. Gazing at the deliberately conceded game on the board, I smiled and replied, these past days, Father has had the grand tutor intensively coaching me in all subjects. I dared not slack off. Father remained astonished. You've been in the palace for barely a month, yet your progress is astonishingly swift. I merely smiled without reply. In my previous life, I drifted as a wandering spirit for years, aimless and idle, always trailing behind Xie Wuyu. I watched how he mastered the art of scheming, how he devised tortures that made prisoners wish for death, how he orchestrated grand strategies to govern the realm. Even this chess game, it was learned through years of shadowing Xie Wuyu. Not just chess, I dabbled in all the arts, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Naturally, I adopted Xie Wuyu's style in all of them. Father grew ever more reliant on me, summoning me daily to dine with him, save for his rest periods. He demanded my constant company. I walked with him in the imperial gardens, accompanied him as he took his medicine, and chatted with him. Father always gazes at me, sighing repeatedly. I know what he laments. He has only 2 sons, including me. Just 2 sons and 1 daughter. And his current illness can only be cured by the heart's blood of his closest kin. No matter how much he cherished me, he could not bear to have his own son cut this blood for him. Yet I pretended not to understand, continuing to massage his shoulders while softly saying, Father, do not sigh. As the Son of Heaven, you ought to be free of worries. Father averted his eyes, a flicker of guilt passing through them. A cold laugh rose in my heart. Since Father is so reluctant, I shall make the decision for him. That evening, as I swung on the swing in my palace courtyard, Huairo entered with a grand procession of palace attendants. In the days after I entered the palace, Huairo would come daily to feign sisterly affection. But as she saw my favor with Father grow ever stronger, she seldom set foot in my Linhua palace anymore. Now she stood before me, coldly smiling at me. I pretended not to notice, instead turning to Xie Wuyu beside me and smiling. You push me higher. True to form, Xie Wuyu pushed the swing higher and higher. The fiery red hem of my gown danced in the air, making even the bleak winter seem vibrant. Xie Wuyu's gaze never left me, as if no one else existed. Seeing this, Huairo grew even angrier. Her voice was dark and menacing. How long do you think your favor will last? In 5 days. It will be time for you to offer your blood. When that day comes, no matter how favored you are, you must extend Father Emperor's life. I finally managed to get Xie Wuyu to stop pushing the swing. I leapt down from the frame and approached Huairo, my expression a mocking smile. To prolong Father's life is my blessing. Sister, are you not pleased for me? Huairou's gaze turned venomous. With a cold snort, she swept her sleeves and left. After Huairou departed, Xia Wuyu approached from behind, lowering his voice. "My lady, is there anything you require?" I turned to face him, a low chuckle escaping my lips. "Indeed. There is a matter of utmost urgency I must entrust to you." I led Xia Wuyu into the inner chamber, retrieving a prepared letter and handing him a purple jade ring engraved with my name. "Remember," I said softly, "it must be delivered personally into the hands of Lord Yuan Shiyuan." Xia Wuyu acknowledged the order and departed. Early the next morning, I went to the imperial bedchamber to visit my father, the emperor. But as soon as I stepped inside, I saw Consort Zhang and Huairou attending by his bedside today. Chatting and laughing with him, such a picture of bliss. Not long after Consort Zhang had me, a newborn, swapped out of the palace. She schemed to kill my mother. Yet despite years since mother's death, no matter how favored Consort Zhang became, father never elevated her to empress. Consort Zhang maintained her beauty meticulously, with her maternal family holding the title of Grand General of the state. She had reigned supreme in the harem for years without rival. Her eyes and brows radiated unabashed coquetry and arrogance. I withdrew my gaze from her indifferently and paid my respects to father. Father spoke softly. Come closer to me." Consort Zhang chuckled lightly. "Why hasn't Huaijin paid her respects at my chambers these past days? When she first entered the palace, she visited me daily." I bowed respectfully to Consort Zhang. "Mother, your daughter has been preoccupied with attending to Father Emperor, neglecting proper etiquette. Please do not be displeased with me." Huairou, standing nearby, added a subtle jab. I had thought perhaps Sister Huaijin simply dislikes Mother Consort. My eyes welled with tears. "Father, I simply felt time was so precious that I wished to spend more with you." Time was indeed precious. Only 4 days remained until the day I would shed my blood. Sure enough, a flicker of pain crossed the emperor's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Consort Zhang, why quarrel with a child?" Consort Zhang's expression froze, clearly not expecting the emperor to rebuke her thus. Her maternal family held the rank of Grand General of the state, and the emperor had always treated her with utmost courtesy and respect. The astonishment on Consort Zhang's face quickly faded, replaced by a smile as she nodded in agreement. Yet the gaze she cast upon me grew ever more profound. For the next few days, I continued reporting to the emperor daily. The imperial physician Qin, chief physician of the Imperial Medical Academy, began conducting frequent examinations on both me and the emperor to ensure the bloodletting procedure would proceed smoothly. On one occasion, as I returned with sweet soup, I overheard the emperor quietly asking physician Qin, after the blood extraction, "Will Huaijin truly be confined to his sickbed?" Physician Qin replied, "Your Majesty, extracting blood from the heart is an exceedingly perilous procedure. A single misstep could cost him his life." The emperor cut him off sharply. "Enough. Say no more." Dr. Qin murmured a quiet yes. An indescribable silence hung heavy in the chamber. I stood at the doorway for a long while before stepping inside, feigning my arrival. I fed him the sweet soup I had personally prepared, spoonful by spoonful, tending to him with utmost care. In the dim light, my father's eyes held a clouded look. He asked me if I hated him. I gazed at him with a constant smile, replying softly, "I do not. It is my blessing that your Majesty can use my blood to heal. I only pray for your Majesty's lifelong prosperity and 100 years of life." Moisture gathered at the corners of his eyes as he stared at me, speechless for a long while. The day for the bloodletting ritual arrived in the blink of an eye. Seated before a bronze mirror, I had a maid arrange my hair into a simple bun, adorned only with a purple jade hairpin. I studied my reflection and murmured softly, "Ah, you. Is everything prepared?" Xia Wuyu nodded reassuringly behind me, signaling all was well. I smiled. then had the maid dress me in plain robes before heading straight to the emperor's bedchamber. The chamber bustled with activity today, all had gathered. Consort Zheng, second Prince Ning Jingxing, and Huiro all wore feigned concern, offering hollow wishes for a successful procedure. Only Consort Zheng kept glancing toward the palace entrance, her expression restless. I let out a silent, bitter laugh, waiting obediently to have my blood drained. Imperial physician Qin dismissed everyone, had me lie upon the makeshift operating bed, and brought out a row of surgical knives, lighting them over fire to sterilize them. Father lay upon the imperial bed, his bloodshot eyes fixed on the ceiling, unable to meet mine. But just as physician Qin was about to make the first incision, a sudden commotion erupted outside, drawing a wave of murmurs. Soon, the personal eunuch Wang rushed to father's side, his face etched with panic. He leaned close and whispered, "Your Majesty. It's terrible. The eldest prince, something has happened." The emperor nearly leapt upright from the bed. "What has happened to Jingsu?" Eunuch Wang stammered, "The crown prince. The crown prince. He was caught in bed with Consort Ling by the guards." At these words, the emperor's fury erupted. The bloodletting procedure could not proceed. He immediately ordered the guards to bring the crown prince, Ning Jingsu, before him. Ning Jingsu was the biological son of Consort Zheng. Upon hearing this, Consort Zheng wept bitterly, clutching Ning Jingsu and arguing that it was Consort Ling who had seduced the crown prince. If punishment must be meted out, it should be Consort Ling who is executed by slow slicing. Concubine Ling trembled in terror beside them. Barely 17 or 18, she had been pursued by Ning Jingsu the moment she entered the palace. Their affair had lasted several years without incident. Today, however, Ning Jingsu had unexpectedly arrived at her chambers early in the morning. They were passionately entwined upon the bed when the imperial guards suddenly burst in. Fearing death and even more timid, Ling Consort, upon hearing she would be executed by Ling Qi, burst into tears and rushed to Ning Jingsu. She begged him, pleading for his mercy and sparing her life for the sake of their years together. Hearing Ling Consort's words, the emperor's face turned even paler. He nearly drew his imperial sword to end Ning Jingsu's life himself. Ning Jingsu remained dazed until a sudden jolt of clarity struck him. As if seeing a ghost, he gasped, "Father! Father! It must be that talisman." His words made no sense whatsoever, leaving everyone utterly bewildered. Empress Zheng clutched him, choking out, "What talisman? Tell your father." Ning Jingsu replied, "Last night, Your Majesty, I had a strange dream. I dreamt a bodhisattva gave me a talisman." Ning Jingsu said, cold sweat pouring down his body. "It said this talisman would help me. Help me." His face flushed crimson as he paused, struggling to continue. "Help me. Become invincible in the bedroom." Ning Jingsu claimed a divine being had bestowed upon him a talisman last night, promising unmatched prowess in the bedroom. Already notorious for his debauchery and insatiable lust for women, he had long resented his perceived inadequacy in the bedroom. Now, with sudden divine aid, he had immediately accepted the talisman, burned it to ashes, and washed them down with water. At this point, Ning Jingsu blamed everything on the talisman, claiming it had controlled him, leading him unwittingly to Consort Ling's palace and even to the wrong bed. In short, the talisman was entirely to blame. At this, the assembly fell silent. Finally, Father Emperor cleared his throat, trembling as he sentenced Consort Ling to death. He also punished Ning Jingsu to 6 months of house arrest, forbidding him from leaving the palace grounds without permission. Consort Zhang and Huiro wanted to say more, but ultimately remained silent. Ning Jingsu accepted the punishment. After this incident, the emperor's health took a sudden turn for the worse. He lay in bed, coughing violently. As I patted his back, I hesitated before saying, "Father, there is something. I'm not sure if I should speak of it." His coughing finally eased somewhat. Panting, he replied, "Huaijin, speak your mind." I whispered, "It's rather strange, but last night I had a disturbing dream." His Majesty abruptly lifted his head to stare at me. "Truly?" I nodded cautiously. "Yes. I dreamt that something unclean within the palace was tormenting your Majesty. Even now, recalling it fills me with dread." His Majesty's expression darkened instantly. His usually cloudy eyes now gleamed with an eerie, predatory intensity. After a moment's contemplation, he abruptly ordered someone to summon Yuan Shiyuan. Yuan Shiyuan arrived swiftly, reaching the palace from neighboring Xingzhou by evening. The Yuan family had produced 3 imperial preceptors in their lineage. Yet His Majesty felt their roots ran too deep, their mastery of the mystical arts too profound, mere whispers could sway an emperor. Thus Yuan Shiyuan had been demoted to Xingzhou, serving as a minor governor. Yet when esoteric arts were crucial, the emperor had no choice but to summon Yuan Shiyuan. Upon entering the palace, Yuan Shiyuan solemnly paid his respects to the emperor, awaiting his orders. Panting heavily, the emperor briefly recounted the day's events. After listening, Yuan Shiyuan requested to lead guards in a thorough inspection of the entire palace. His Majesty immediately dispatched 2 rows of imperial guards to accompany Yuan Shiyuan as they patrolled the entire palace. It was not until midnight that Yuan Shiyuan returned to his father's presence, his expression grave, and knelt at his feet. His Majesty asked in a deep voice, "Minister Yuan, what have you discovered?" Yuan Shiyuan, his face heavy with solemnity, replied, "What I must report is treasonous. If I speak, I beg your Majesty to spare my life." The emperor frowned. "Speak." Yuan Shiyuan bowed again. "Your Majesty must promise this servant." I intervened to smooth things over. Speaking softly, "Minister Yuan, rest assured. If the emperor intends to execute you, I shall plead for your life." Yuan Shiyuan looked at me, his eyes brightening. "You must be Princess Huaijin." I gave Yuan Shiyuan a slight nod. Yuan Shiyuan declared, "Your Majesty, there is someone within the palace who is your nemesis. Sooner or later, he will take your life." Father's face paled. "Who?" Yuan Shiyuan, "It is the eldest prince." Yuan Shiyuan, "The eldest prince is now possessed by an evil spirit, making him exceedingly dangerous. Moreover, his birth chart clashes with your Majesty's. Once the blade is drawn, blood will be shed. I fear." Father Emperor was struck speechless by Yuan Shiyuan's words. Yuan Shiyuan pressed on, "Your Majesty, how did this affliction come upon you?" Father Emperor, already nearly petrified with fear, stammered, 2 months ago, Jingsu strayed into the miasmic marshes. I went to save him." His words trailed off abruptly. Even Father Emperor himself dared not continue. Yuan Shiyuan's expression darkened further. "The eldest prince's destiny is in direct conflict with your Majesty's. It is far too perilous." Cold sweat beaded on the emperor's forehead. "Yuan Shiyuan, it would be best to send the eldest prince far away from the palace. The farther from your Majesty, the better. He must never come near your Majesty again." His Majesty's gaze darkened, his brows knitting tightly together. At this point, Yuan Shiyuan suddenly turned his attention to me. "Today marks this humble servant's first encounter with Princess Huaijin. A faint purple aura of divine energy surrounds your highness, truly a rare sight." Yuan Shiyuan's tone grew exceedingly respectful. Might the princess deign to share her birth chart? Only then did Father Emperor snap back to attention, relaying my birth chart to Yuan Shiyuan. Upon hearing it, Yuan Shiyuan abruptly knelt on the ground, exclaiming joyfully, "Your Majesty, Great Zhou is blessed." Yuan Shiyuan, "Your Highness's destiny is of incalculable nobility. Truly, you are the purple star descended from heaven." destined to bestow a lifetime of prosperity upon the great Zhou. My expression shifted slightly, my face flushing crimson. Minister Yuan. I am merely one who grew up among the common folk. But Father Emperor drew my hand to his side and patted it gently. I looked at him, and Father Emperor looked back at me. The anger in his eyes earlier finally gave way to a hint of relief. I lowered my eyes, a silent smile curling my lips. Thus, the blood extraction ritual was temporarily set aside. That night, as I arranged peonies and clivia within a flower vase, I murmured to Xiaowu, You did very well. Xiaowu stood behind me with bowed head, his gaze carrying a faint tenderness. I stepped before him, resting my head lightly on his shoulder and giggling softly. You. How did you manage to trick the crown prince into drinking that talismanic potion? Xiaowu replied, that illusion potion was exceptionally potent. He could no longer distinguish reality from illusion. The potion contained a trace of aphrodisiac. So by dawn, the crown prince was desperate for release, hence his early morning rush into Consort Ling's chambers. Xiaowu grew intensely serious, his handsome features subtly hardening with a cool, sharp edge. I reached up to brush his cheek, cooing, You look absolutely stunning. Xiaowu flushed crimson instantly. I wrapped my arms around his neck, but that alone won't suffice. You must also help me with one more matter. Once this is done, I murmured softly, I'll send you to Kushin Temple to study martial arts. The world's greatest assassin, Zheng Shan, serves as a monk sweeping the courtyard there. You must find a way to persuade him to take you as his disciple. Being outside the palace will also make it easier for you to assist me. I asked, Are you willing? Xiaowu gazed deeply at me, his eyes brimming with restrained affection. You is willing. I smiled and ruffled his hair. You is so good to me. 3 days later, the eldest prince, Ning Jingsu, found himself embroiled in another scandal. 2 years prior, during the drought in Jiangnan, the emperor had tasked him with overseeing disaster relief. Yet unexpectedly, the Ministry of Revenue raised accusations in court, claiming the prince's relief funds ledgers were falsified. They alleged he had embezzled vast sums of silver, leading to countless starving victims of the drought. People resorted to cannibalism, trading their children for food, and mountains of bones littered the land, a tragedy beyond imagination. Public outrage surged, demanding the emperor account for the deaths of the starved people. This incident sent the emperor into a furious rage once more. With his last line of defense breached, the emperor finally resolved to summon imperial physician Qin in secret. He ordered Qin to conceal the matter from consort Zhang and proceed directly to perform a brutal procedure on the forcibly brought Ning Jingsu, extracting blood from his heart to cure his incurable illness. Upon the surgery's conclusion, I rushed to the imperial bedchamber just in time. With pitiful eyes, I pleaded to my father, Father, your daughter is ever willing to sacrifice for you, so long as you remain healthy and content. The operation had been successful, and the emperor's spirits had lifted considerably. Rubbing my head, he murmured, Huai Zhen, my good child, I know you are the most devoted. I resumed my role as his personal attendant, while the crown prince, half dead and utterly weakened, was carried back to his residence. During a conversation with Father, I casually voiced my confusion. Father, why did the crown prince embezzle such vast sums of silver? I was utterly perplexed. He is a prince. Could he possibly spend all that silver? The moment these words left my lips, Father Emperor's expression shifted subtly. Yet he restrained his reaction, merely muttering something about the crown prince's immaturity. I pressed no further, instead following his lead to shift the conversation. News of the crown prince's heart blood extraction reached consort Zhang's ears that very night. Furious, consort Zhang stormed to the imperial chambers that very night, demanding an explanation from the emperor. But the emperor shut himself away. leaving consort Zhang to stand outside his chambers all night. Coincidentally, a heavy rain began falling in the middle of the night. Consort Zhang stood drenched in the rain all night long. By dawn, she finally collapsed from exhaustion. Huairou also rushed over upon hearing the news. Father Emperor had already retired for the night, and I encountered her in the corridor. Huairou's gaze pierced me like a venomous snake as she uttered each word. Huaizhen, was all of this your scheme? I feigned utter innocence. What are you talking about? Sister? I don't understand. Consumed by rage, Huairou raised her hand high, aiming a slap directly at my face. I stood my ground, taking the blow head-on. I even deliberately stumbled backward, tumbling down the stone steps. Huairou froze, utterly stunned. But soon, palace attendants reported the incident to father. Half a cup of tea later, I was escorted into father's bedchamber, and Huairou was summoned in as well. Father Emperor stared at my swollen cheek and my dislocated ankle, his fury palpable. He spoke coldly. Huairou, you are but an adopted daughter. How dare you commit such insolence? Harming my own flesh and blood. Adopted daughter. Own flesh and blood. Father Emperor had raised Huairou all these years, cherishing her like the apple of his eye. Yet now, for my sake, he uttered these harsh words. Huairou burst into tears almost instantly. Father, you loved me most, didn't you? How could you? I fought back my own tears, yet still managed a smile as I said to father, Father, I'm fine. Please don't scold Huairou. It was just an accident. But seeing my reaction only fueled father's anger further. He immediately issued an edict on the spot, demoting Huairou to the rank of a mere princess. Huairou remained kneeling on the ground, her face deathly pale, frozen in shock. Father personally massaged my wounds, his expression filled with anguish. I tilted my head, locking eyes with Huairou kneeling below, and let out a cold, sinister smile. Princess Huairou, the suffering I endured in my past life, this lifetime, I shall repay you in full. Every last bit. Princess Huairou was relocated to the Qingxin Palace, where I had resided in my previous life, a remote and desolate place. When she was in power, she would frequently beat and scold the servants. Now that she had fallen from grace, those servants had all fled, only appearing once a day to serve her 3 meals. She tried to seek out Consort Zhang, but was driven away before she could even enter the gates of Consort Zhang's palace. She then sought out Ning Jingxing. The second prince had always exchanged suggestive glances and ambiguous advances with her. Yet when she approached him now, she witnessed Ning Jingxing and me playing chess in the pavilion. Huairou stormed into the pavilion as if possessed. Before she could utter a word, the guards beside Ning Jingxing seized her and dragged her away. I watched coldly as Huairou was dragged away, not looking away until her figure vanished from sight. Ning Jingxing placed another piece on the board, his gaze toward me tinged with wariness and curiosity. How did you know my elder brother embezzled funds back then? I stared at him expressionlessly. Does it matter? Ning Jingxing laughed. Xia Wuyu came to me then, asking me to investigate the ledgers of my eldest brother's disaster relief funds from 2 years ago. I thought he was joking, but the Ministry of Revenue stammered and stuttered. They were actually covering for my brother. I replied calmly. The ministry feared offending Consort Zhang and the Crown Prince. Even knowing the disaster relief accounts were flawed, they dared not speak of it. Ning Jingxing nodded. Had I not forced the issue in the emperor's name, this scandal would never have surfaced. I said, congratulations. Now that you're the sole surviving prince, the throne is yours by right. Ning Jingxing's eyes crinkled with amusement. And congratulations to you, you won't have to endure the agony of having your heart's blood drained. I rose and turned to leave. Ning Jingxing called after me from behind. Huaizhen. We are blood siblings. There's no need for such coldness. Without a glance back, I strode away. After the eldest prince had his heart's blood extracted, he lay sickly weak. Yet he still harbored such desires, ordering tonics to be administered and summoning 2 concubines to his chambers. Little did they know the tonic's potency was too fierce. In the end, he became so frenzied he died, collapsing onto the bedside maid's belly. Upon learning of this, consort Zhang was driven mad with rage. She alternated between tears and laughter, her appearance withering away. Father, however, grew stronger day by day. His spirit revitalized, and he resumed attending court. I became the most revered young princess in all of Great Zhou. My father adored me. The nobles and officials admired me, and everyone fawned over me. It was just like in my previous life, when everyone had fawned over Huairou. But what they admired and fawned over was merely the title of princess, not the real me. I had long since sent Xia Wuyu to Kuxin Temple to train in martial arts. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye, and within the palace, I could have anything I desired. On New Year's Eve that year, Xia Wuyu returned after completing his training, coming back to my side. His figure had grown tall and slender, and his features and bearing already hinted at the future form of the 9,000 years. The only difference was the suppressed affection in his eyes when he looked at me. Today, the snow fell heavily. I took Xia Wuyu with me, and had a maid carry a bowl of bird's nest soup, making our way to the Qingxin Palace. On New Year's Eve, lanterns illuminated the entire palace. Yet the Qingxin Palace stood eerily quiet, lit only by a single, forlorn white candle. 2 years had passed, and Huairou had grown emaciated and timid. The look in her eyes when she met mine was filled with boundless terror. I personally carried the bird's nest to Huairou and said softly, "Eat this. After you do, you won't have to suffer this torment anymore." Huairou shook her head repeatedly, backing away. But palace attendants quickly rushed forward, restraining her. I handed the bird's nest to a maid standing beside me. The maid spooned it into Huarou's mouth, forcing her to swallow it bite by bite. Giggling, I turned to Xia Wuyu and said, "Xia Wuyu, you find this quite amusing too, don't you?" Xia Wuyu gazed at me with tender eyes. "Yes. Very amusing." I took his hand and led him outside. "Come. It's nearly midnight. Let's set off fireworks." After consort Zhang's death, her maternal family's general of the state formally rebelled. Yet throughout the court, there was no one to lead the troops. Father's health continued to deteriorate, growing ever worse. I suggested to Father Emperor, why not send second brother to lead the campaign? As the only remaining prince, he must shoulder this responsibility. Father Emperor sat alone in the imperial study all night. Early the next morning, he issued an imperial decree ordering Ning Jingxing to lead the troops into battle. The 2 sides clashed fiercely at Jiaguan Pass. The war dragged on for 2 full years before the general of the state's forces gradually crumbled. Yet Ning Jingxing fared no better. Severely wounded, he was left crippled. My father's health deteriorated further, leaving him in a constant daze of sleep. I began managing court affairs myself, while secretly instructing Xia Wuyu to assassinate Ning Jingxing. As a woman involved in politics, opposition grew louder both inside and outside the court. But it didn't matter. I merely had several groups of gossiping civil officials executed, then displayed their corpses on the white marble plaza. Every time the civil and military officials attended court, they could see those rows of bodies. After that, no one dared to speak ill of the emperor again. Once Ning Jingxing was dead, I became the sole true heaven-sent ruler. I appointed Yuan Shiyuan as the imperial preceptor and had Xia Wuyu secretly assist me in governing. Under my rule, the Great Zhou enjoyed peace, prosperity, and flourishing. 3 more years passed in the blink of an eye, though my harem was filled with countless beautiful yet useless women. In truth, I spent my days and nights in revelry with Xia Wuyu. Xia Wuyu was so intelligent, surely any child we bore would be exceptionally wise as well. Yet, whenever I awoke from dreams in the dead of night, I would always see visions of Xia Wuyu from my past life, using the emperor as a puppet to command the feudal lords. I would smile warmly at Xia Wuyu and ask him, "Xia Wuyu, would you betray me?" He would kneel at my feet, repeating over and over, "Your Majesty, I dare not." But just because he says he dares not, should I believe him? That fake princess, Huairou, was originally the child of a lowly wet nurse. After pondering, I concluded the time had come. I summoned Xia Wuyu and placed a bowl of bird's nest soup before him. With a faint, ambiguous smile, I asked, "Do you dare to drink it?" The Xia Wuyu of today was indistinguishable from the 9,000 years of the past. Handsome in form, radiant in bearing, his schemes unfathomably deep. He stood with hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed intently upon me. "You wish to kill me?" I laughed. "Indeed. You are too dangerous. I cannot rest easy," I declared. "When you die, I shall crown you empress. When I too pass on, we shall be buried together. You go first, I shall follow decades later." Xia Wuyu. I continued to watch him with a smile. If he willingly drank the bird's nest soup, that would be fine. But if he resisted, the hidden guards I had stationed behind the door would instantly shoot poisoned arrows, killing him on the spot. Xia Wuyu kept his eyes fixed on me, his gaze heavy. After a long while, he finally picked up the bird's nest soup and drank it in one gulp. Staggering. He collapsed to the floor and smiled at me, "As long as you're happy." Watching Xia Wuyu lying there, my heart felt hollow, yet strangely pleased. Truthfully, the bird's nest contained no poison, only a trace of a tranquilizer. I merely wished to test his loyalty. That night, I kicked him and muttered, "Hey, I'm pregnant." Xia Wuyu pulled me into his embrace, chuckling softly, "Thank you. What are you thanking me for?" "For saving me all those years ago." He paused. "Also, the child in your womb is my flesh and blood. Why would I ever betray you?" I thought about it. That does make sense. Xia Wuyu stretched lazily. "So stop overthinking things. Go wash up and get some sleep." The end.